Officially, hello to everybody. Welcome to our first open lecture on relationship astrology and synastry. This is the beginning of a new course, which is starting right now, which will include 8 sessions. Everything will be recorded, so if someone watches this video later, you can always catch up on the recordings. But my purpose is to introduce you to this interesting area and to give you some valuable information, even in this very first class. So this will be an introduction about generally what matters most. What is relationship astrology and how do we look at this and what's that all about? So that's just like opening the door perhaps and looking around. And in the other classes, of course, we will dive deeper, we will explore. If you have any questions, please feel free to type in the chat. You can always send me an email if you're watching later. You can text me on Telegram. You can find me there. Marina Stoichkova is my name. And yeah, let's get started. If you have any questions, again, you can also leave them for the end of the class. So, relationship astrology. What is that about? The first thing which I want to point out is that, well, I think it's pretty clear that this is one of the most interesting areas. Many people come to astrology with this question, something related to their personal life, to their relationship, to love, and all the other interesting stuff. So nowadays, this is very popular. Like, I don't really have the statistics, but if it's not the top 1 question, it's definitely at the top 3 questions. But what's important to consider also is that this is something brand new, or at least quite new. If it's not brand new, it's quite new. Why is that? Astrology is a very ancient knowledge field. There have been astrologers in different times with different approaches and all of that. But people's personal life back in those times have been completely different from what we have right now. And the way we look at relationships, love, marriage nowadays is completely different. So we need to consider this fact. This is something quite new, because for centuries and even more, marriage has been something completely different from love. Like, it's a deal, it's arranged very often by the parents or the families, and love, that's something like secondary if it exists at all, or at least it's not a necessity, in order to get married. So our concept and understanding about relationships, marriage, and love nowadays, and I talk about the Western world, is very different. Here, even nowadays, there are still communities where marriage and love are like separate things, and marriages are arranged, and yeah, it's very different. So what we will explore is our modern perspective about love, relationships, personal connections, and all of those things. But again, keep in mind that sometimes those could be different. Sometimes people have the question, when will I fall in love and get married? And it makes sense to ask them, what exactly is your question? Because those can happen separately. And in reality, people might be in love, they may not get married, and other people may get married and they may not be in love. So even nowadays, this is like happening when, I'm not evaluating this, but it happens. So it's important to, it's not just important, it's necessary to consider the environment, the culture where people are living, and that includes also the time. So it's one thing to analyze, for example, a relationship or potential for a relationship of a woman who lives in New York nowadays, and to compare this to, for example, 50 years ago, or I don't know, 100 years ago, and, in a completely different place. And again, even nowadays, I have clients who come from, such a religion and community where this is still what happens. Marriages are arranged, and that's how people live, and that's totally fine for them. So keep this in mind. The time, the culture are very important, but we will look mostly from the modern perspective. So that's interesting and necessary also. The cultural environment. Recently, I went to Egypt on a very important and special journey for me. And we got introduced to the culture there. Maybe you know it, I didn't know this, that nowadays men are officially allowed to have 4 women, like to be married for 4 women there. It's not so common because it's very expensive. There are like requirements and how it's done and all the other stuff. But for them, this is normal. And it's okay. 1 man to be married with 4 women. So why am I saying this? Because again, it's important to consider the culture. If you look at the chart of a man or even a woman from Egypt, then monogamy and all of those expectations will mean something very different. So please consider this. Or if you look at your parents or grandparents' charts and they have lived in different times, again, consider this. But we will explore a more kind of like, modern perspective. We will discuss, of course, monogamy and, other things. But again, the culture plays a major role and what's like appropriate for different communities. Okay, so my next point here is love, dating, and marriage. Those are, again, potentially completely different things. And in astrology, it's very obvious. When we get to the technicalities and we explore which houses are related to the first stage, like falling in love, the playful part, which houses are related to the communication, and also which houses are related to responsibilities, official marriage. Those are different houses. That's why people's relationships may change. And maybe you have had this experience yourself. Maybe you have seen this in people around you, close people. So what happens sometimes is that people have one type of relationship when they meet and they are dating, and it's, again, playful and fun, and it's nice to be together. And if they start living together, things change. Or if they sign up, if they get married officially, things also change. Like suddenly their relationship may become, I don't know, restricting, or one of them might be unhappy, or like the dynamic becomes very different. Astrologically, this is very clear for us because we have, again, different houses which describe those different stages of the relationship. And that's why sometimes we may find that for a particular person, it's better not to get officially married. That would allow them to have a happier personal life, potentially. Or in other cases, we may see, oh, the real challenge is at first, to open up, to to reveal your feelings. But once things get serious and you feel stable, it's a different scenario. So this is also something which we can explore, and we will, based on the chart. So the different stages of relationships and the different circumstances can be explored in the chart. So love, dating, marriage might be very different for one person. So this is, again, a very important step in our analysis. So which are the three components, or the three big areas that we will explore in our training? The first thing is the most important, and it's about exploring and learning what to look for in the personal chart. Even, and actually especially, when you want to understand how two people will live together, or what's the dynamic of their relationship, or what is the potential of their relationship, the first thing we need to do is to look at the two charts separately, because there is so much valuable information there. Because everyone comes with their personality, with their scenarios, with their patterns, and that's where we need to start. This is also what can help the person to understand, oh, okay, this might be my weak point, or this could be a mistake I'm making, or this is where I can grow, or, oh, I might have a blind spot here. So it's especially helpful, of course, if you want to see what's the compatibility between two people, but also in the case when, for example, one is single and they don't want to be that way, but they don't know why is that or what they can do about it. And of course, we need to be realistic. We are not saying that, oh, it's a magic wand and we will fix you. Usually that's not how this works. It requires personal commitment and effort and desire, first of all, to be very honest with oneself, to look at your own potential mistakes or weak points, and to be able to do something about them. But again, astrology is a great tool for more awareness and more clarity. So the first thing is we look at the charts separately. We explore the personality, the we will talk about which are the most important indications in the chart, but this is where we start. So we will start our class also with this by exploring the personal chart, discussing and again, talking about the individual chart and which are those points in the chart that can guide you and what to look for. Then the next piece is about the connection between two people, or it's more like compatibility. So you have a partner or a spouse or someone important in your life. How do you affect each other? This is also something which we will explore. What to look for, how to find also. This is a little bit more part of the first piece that we explore, but how to find the characteristics of the needed partner. Or in other words, which are the requirements? So what does the person need in order for someone to be their partner? So what indications do they need to have in order to become their partner? But also what happens, how they connect with each other, how they influence each other. This is really about compatibility, about aspects between their planets and which are the most important. We will talk mostly about personal romantic relationships, but you may find this approach helpful even if you want to understand more about other compatibilities with your kids, even with your business partners. Of course, there are nuances, but again, the approach will become clear. So this is the second part. So again, we work with the two charts and the connections. And the third point is about what is called composite chart. The composite chart is one chart which is calculated by the charts of two people. And there are two types of approaches to calculate those. We will discuss how it's done. It's done with the software. So, but I will tell you just the logic behind both of them. And this third chart that we have, one chart that we call composite chart, also has a meaning. And we will learn how to interpret this chart. So what to look for, which are the really important indications in this chart and how important this chart is. I will tell you my personal opinion that this is the third thing I look at. So for me, this is not like the dominant, like most important piece of information. But of course, we can also use it, and it brings more to our understanding. So those are like the three big things that we will explore. Something else which is also part of the whole thing is about the family dynamics. And this is especially interesting. I'm thinking maybe this may turn into another class or training specifically about family dynamics between generations, ancestors, parents, and children. That's like huge. But here we will use this knowledge in order to understand how this can affect our scenarios when it comes to, again, marriage, the family we create, the relationships we have, because I'm understanding more and more how important the role of our ancestors and family is. And it has nothing to do with whether you communicate with them now, even if they are alive or not right now. Like, it's all part of the whole thing. So we will add this information as well. We'll see how, the flow will guide us, but this is definitely something I want to introduce you to because it can help a lot. Okay, some other things which I want to mention right now. Something that may or may not surprise you, but maybe it will. Where we will start is the position of the moon. Why is that? The moon is not Venus, so this isn't literally like the planet of love. And my students also know, I have repeated this many times, that the moon technically is not an emotional planet. The moon is about how we express what is already inside of us and how we connect. Even from an astronomical perspective, if we think about the moon is constantly circling around the Earth. So it creates like a filter. And symbolically, or literally actually, the energies of the other planets need to get through this filter of the moon so that we can process them. Well, in our lives, the moon is also representing this filter that other people need to get through so that, they can get close to us. And by exploring the moon, we can understand so much about the ability of the person to connect to others. Can they open up? Are they closed? Are they too cautious, or are they too proactive? Where is their focus? We will talk about 3 main groups, I may call this, which are about, again, different characteristics of the moon. And based on that, we can understand where is the person looking, what do they need, and also how capable they are to be nurtured. This is especially important in relationships because we may have an amazing Venus, the planet of love, which is generally great for your personal love life. I don't know, your 7th house may also have wonderful indications. If the moon is very problematic, it will be very difficult for the person to relate to the others or another person, or even to allow themselves to receive, basically. So the moon is, first of all, the planet which is related to our first experiences here on the Earth. The moon, if we look at the different ages in a human life, the moon is ruling the first 7 years. So this is literally the first thing that we learn. Of course, it's related to the mother, the home environment, the survival needs. So it's really a foundation for everything else, for how we see the world, for how we interpret the world, for how we can relate it to it. So I'm not exaggerating or making this more important than it is. It really is important. And that's why we will start there. Because again, someone may have a wrong, or for them it may not be wrong, but kind of twisted perspective, because their moon is very hurt, So how this can help? Well, it may help with, again, more self-awareness, to recognize, okay, I have those patterns, I have those energies. It's very possible that I may do this and that, and I may see things in this direction. So again, it may help us to understand what we need to heal, how we need to relate to others, and which are our most important emotional needs. Because in relationships, and again, as I told you, we will talk about the relationships in which are based on love. Like in a arranged marriage, of course, this is like another thing. And I'm not saying that it won't work, it definitely will, but it's another story. So if we talk about marriage and love, the moon will be very important, and generally for understanding each other. So we will explore how to interpret the moon in a personal chart. Of course, later when we get to the compatibility, the connections between the moons, or the aspects of the moons between two charts, will also be very important. And you know what, also, the moon is not just about nurturing and emotional needs, but it's also like working on a very practical level, like on the level of habits and routines, and like what you do on a daily basis, which at first may sound like, oh, let's leave that, we are in love, we want passion, or we have the passion. But once people start to live with each other, especially after some time passes, the moon can become, it's always important, but when people live together, the moon is even more important, because at that point, some potential conflicts or disharmony may rise up, or the other thing, it may turn out that they can live in harmony and balance together. But the moon is also like very practically oriented. Like, can you live with each other's habits and routines, and like how you organize things on a daily basis, like that practical. So the aspects of the moon will be very important in the compatibility chart. So the connections between the different planets. Is the second step using Synastry charts? Yes, if by Synastry charts you mean the interactions between the two charts, yes. If you mean the composite chart, like one chart out of two, this is the third part, but again, we'll also look at that. Okay, so the moon, very important. The next thing that we will discuss is the different types of love. This is a very interesting concept. And yeah, I was just amazed when I was learning about it, and it makes so much sense. If you think about it, people have very different ideas and perspectives about what love is. For someone, love is supposed to be passionate, exciting, I don't know, like fulfilling, bringing this, constant emotion. For other people, this is crazy. This is like, oh, how will I live with so much tension? No, I want stability. I want to know that I can rely on the partner. Like, that's their understanding. Someone else may need the drama, may need things to be like too rough and like always on the edge and provoking each other, so that they know that the other person really sees them and loves them. So we will talk about those four major types. which again explore the different types. They are, I will give you this hint right now, they are related to the fixed signs. So Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Those are the signs which describe or which are related to the 4 archetypes of love. So first of all, we will describe which is which and what are the needs of them as archetypes. But then we'll also try to figure out how we can find from the chart which would be the most important. And that's not an easy task. So it won't be like, oh, it's crystal clear and it's always and only this. Potentially, the best scenario is to learn to combine all of those, like to be complete, the 4 different types. So this could be, for example, a goal we may have for our development, which would be very nice. But for most people, we have like one dominant, one can be like a secondary, but usually one is like, okay, this is exactly what I need the most. Like this is at the top of my list. So again, after we describe them and the different energies that they bring, we will talk about how we can find this from the chart. So, and this is also essential when we are comparing 2 charts. So what one person understands by love and what the other, and is there harmony? Can there be a balance? So this is also a very, very interesting thing to explore. And, you know, the point of this course is not just to like give you a ton of information and like, okay, work with that. It won't be like a cookbook. So we won't cover like huge lists and talk about, you know, everything from each side, because first of all, that's quite impossible. Second of all, it's not a creative process. So the main point here is to know where to look and also to kind of like go on a journey yourself and see what is important for you, what would resonate with you, kind of like to open up your perspective also. Like for me, this will be the most important. If at the end of the course, you feel like you have related more to the energy of love and you have a better understanding, maybe about your chart or about a relationship that is important for you, and to be excited to continue this journey, which might be like a lifetime journey. But that is my intention for the course. And this concept about the different types of love and the different archetypes is one of the really important ones. Okay. Do you think about the possibility of a moon as a changeable planet? It can be consciously changed over time. I am not familiar and I can't support or kind of like say that it's like I'm just not working with this. Okay. The next thing, which is also important and affects our relationships, and this is like a general thing. Very often in our relationships, we attract people who bring something that is missing for us. For example, it could be an element which you don't have in your chart, or which is very like almost missing. Sometimes it could be a modality or something else, but very often, especially if we have something like really accentuated, for example, an element which is very, very strong, like, and by very, very strong, I mean you have many planets in this element, and you have something which is missing. Very often in your relationships, you will attract people who will bring this energy that is missing. I have experienced this in my life, and I can confirm that also from my life and from my clients' charts and experiences, that this is very often the case. For example, I have a dominant water element and I have no air. And I have, over the years, I have attracted many people with air energy because it's missing. Even my daughter has dominant air energy. And in family dynamics, even in marriages, very often you will find this, that the other person or someone else who is important in your life brings something that is unfamiliar to you, that is missing. From one side, this is helpful because now you kind of like have access to this resource through another person, so you can kind of like touch this energy. So from that point of view, this can be balancing. From another point of view, it might be difficult for you to understand this energy. Like, it's kind of like an alien energy. What's that about? I don't get it. I have other priorities. I understand things differently. So here, the situation can go both ways. And sometimes they can be both ways at the same time. Either we feel like, okay, now I'm kind of like have more of this, or I'm more complete. Or we may feel, but that's kind of annoying. I don't get this. I want to change this in the other person. That's very common. So keep this in mind. If something in the chart, your chart or another chart you're looking at, is missing, very often another person can bring this to your life, and this could be like a hook for you, for both of you. So the missing piece, essential. Here, I also want to mention another thing about astrology configurations. It's very interesting when, or if you have some kind of aspect configuration in your chart, for example, a Tau square, and a planet of another person is triggering your Tau square. For example, it could either trigger one of the points of your Tau square, or even more interesting, it can close the Tau square and turn this into a grand cross. So those are also very interesting relationships. The first thing which I want to say, if that's the case, keep in mind that this person is triggering something that is already within you. For example, you have a Tau square, and for example, the focal point is Pluto, and I don't know, the Saturn of your partner is in conjunction with your Pluto. And you feel like, here we have some kind of power struggles, like he's trying to restrict me or to control me, or like there could be different dynamics. But keep in mind the fact that the planet of the other person is triggering your Tau square means that he's just bringing up energies which are already within you. And this can feel difficult if we talk about the Tau square, for example. It can feel difficult. But at the same time, this might be also a sign or an indication that you have needed some help in order to bring up or connect to those energies. So perhaps, especially if something is difficult or uncomfortable, or we are judging this in ourselves, we don't want to be, for example, controlling or like demanding, or we are trying to, do something which we would like to be more of. In those cases, a person may come into your life and provoke you in such a way that you get to know yourself really well. So those relationships are not easy, but they can, again, help you to bring parts of yourself that you have neglected or kind of like put in under the carpet, so to speak. So this is very interesting, to check those triggers. We may also have the opposite scenario. For example, you have a nice configuration like a grand trine, a bisextile, and the planet of your partner is also triggering one of the points. That will bring you more resource, that will bring you more energy to express your own potential. So again, it's triggering something that is already within you. So this is like a general advice and direction what to look for. If there are triggers of aspect configuration, so you have the aspect configuration and the planet of your partner is somehow also connecting to this configuration, those are quite significant connections. Okay, another point in our relationships also, what can happen if you have, and most people have, some difficult aspects. Let's focus on the major ones, the square and the opposition. When we have such an aspect, it means that we have planets which are in conflict with each other. There is some kind of friction, they don't understand each other, they are pulling into different directions. It's difficult, okay? And very often what we do is we like one of those more, one of the planets in the difficult connection. It may happen for different reasons, like, for example, one of the planets in the square, let's say, is just resonates better with the rest of the chart. So we recognize it more as our part of ourselves. It's our own thing. So we kind of like it and we recognize this more. And very often the other planet might be kind of rejected from us in certain way. And this is like a general rule in psychology and in astrology as well, that when we suppress something in ourselves, this energy just can't disappear. You can't get rid of your Pluto or Saturn or Mars and pretend like it's not there or you don't have the difficult aspects. Not possible. But what may happen and what happens in case we deny or disconnect from this energy is that another person shows up in our lives and plays the role of this planet. So, for example, we have, let's say, a square between Venus and Mars. But somehow Venus is the planet which, especially for women, they may tend to relate more to Venus. But also, let's say that generally your energies are kind of softer. So you want to kind of like have more peaceful relationships. You care about harmony. You're kind and polite and gentle. So you like more the Venus energy. You don't like that much the harshness, the possible aggression of Mars, or like to be too pushy. You don't like this. It's just, you're trying to separate from this energy. Then chances are another person, maybe a potential partner, will show up in your life and they will play Mars for you. So for example, they can be jealous, they can be harsh sometimes, or they can provoke you. And you feel very annoyed, or you feel hurt, or you really don't like this. And yet it's difficult to cut the connection because you feel pulled energetically, because this person is representing your Mars that you don't want to recognize. So it's also nice to look at, again, in the individual chart, to look at your challenging aspects, the squares and the oppositions. Explore what each of those mean for you. What is their energy about? And see which one you like more. And of course, things are not always black and white. So we are not always like completely rejecting one of the planets. Obviously, in life, things are kind of like, not that necessarily clear. Also, over time, they may change. At certain age, we may be on a certain level. Then when we mature, we can kind of like recognize and bring back those energies. So this isn't like once and for all, absolutely not. We may evolve, and hopefully we evolve. So things may change over time. But overall, it's a very good idea to explore each one of your challenging aspects, of your squares and oppositions, and to see generally what's the conflict there and which one is more difficult for you to process. For example, if you have an opposition between the moon and Mars, chances are you will like and you will connect easier to one of those energies better and easier. So if you relate more to the moon energy, you will be kind of like, being softer and kinder, maybe even a little bit childish, and like you need someone else to be like the authority, to be stronger, to take the responsibility. And you will probably attract a Saturn person in your life. And chances are you will feel also like, oh, but he's somehow restricting me. He demands, he wants me to do stuff or be more organized. So it's quite difficult, and it, of course, not impossible, but it requires awareness to be able to, find the balance and kind of like recognize Moon and Saturn at the same time. Or if you choose, and this isn't like conscious choice, like, oh, let's look at the chart, oh, I picked this one. Of course not. But if you recognize more Saturn and you have this Moon Saturn opposition, perhaps you will attract someone who will be annoying with their lack of responsibility, or you will feel like they are weak and they are needy or whatever. So of course there are many layers about this whole story, but then again, exploring the challenging aspects in your very own chart can also show you what kind of energies you might be projecting. You might be, it's easier or more difficult for you to process. And those that are more difficult, that you don't like or you are judging, very often another person will play them for you. And what is the point of all of this exploration? The point is that if you have this Moon Saturn opposition and you realize that, okay, I have this kind of like a contradiction, and you start to search for the balance within yourself. So to fulfill both Moon and Saturn and not neglect them. So find a balance between work and rest, between opening up, connecting to people, and also keeping some boundaries and all of those things. when you do this consciously, you won't need Saturn to come from the outside and be like, you know, hit you on the head with their demands and 100 requirements. So yeah, it's kind of like a way to work on yourself so that you can have happier relationships, and you won't need those type of, you know, relationships which are like a hard, tough lesson for you. If you are rejecting, neglecting some energies which are part of you, chances are that your relationships will be like a hard lesson, because the energies that are suppressed and rejected, they don't show up nicely and kind of like softly and gently. They're more like a hit, like it's intense, and it may feel like really like a lesson, like which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Of course, there are different paths, and yeah, it is what it is. But if you want to do things the other way, like work on yourself, so you won't need harsh lessons coming from your relationships and partnerships, then that's a great approach. And here, maybe, at least if I were you, I would have this question. Maybe you're also thinking about it. Okay, but what if I'm already in a relationship and it's like a learning experience, like there is a lesson. So I have been maybe rejecting some energies, and my partner is bringing up those energies, and I don't like it. What about that? Well, again, you can work on yourself, because obviously we can't fix or change the other person. It's, you know, like a whole other thing. But when we change ourselves, other people change as well. So my point here is that you can improve your current relationships as well by working on yourself, by exploring again. What is it that I'm not recognizing? What am I suppressing? And if you embrace those energies, whether it's Mars or Saturn or whatever it could be, or Neptune, the way your partner treats you, the dynamic of your relationship will change as well. So there is always, I think, a point to do the effort. So yeah, the difficult aspects. The next thing I want to talk about, my next point, is about the houses. So we will talk about which houses play the most important role in our personal life, in our relationships. And now I just want to give you the basic logic and direction. Which houses will play a major role? The first house, which is at the top, if you want to understand more about your relationships, about your love life, about your life, it's your first house, your ascendant and your first house, because that's what describes you, your behavior, your energy, your resources, your directions, basically everything. And you are bringing this to everything else that you are doing. If you want to understand more about your financial situation, about your career, about your friendship, studies, basically anything, it's always nice, if not necessary, to, or I should say the other way, but anyway, you got my point. It's always important to look at your first house because that's your personality. Perhaps not the whole personality, but it's this part, this layer of behavior and actions, and again, how you step into a contact with others. So you are bringing this wherever you go, to every life area. And I think that it's very important to look at everything that describes first house. So the sign, of course, if there are planets in your first house, and there may not be, and that's not a problem. But one thing is for sure, you do have a ruler of your ascendant, which is also becoming the ruler of the whole chart. So by exploring what is the status of this planet, her essential strength, or in other words, the sign position, how comfortable is the planet in this sign? What are the aspects with the other planets? Very important. Is there a connection with seventh house? Because seventh house is officially the house of serious relationships. And you can understand a lot, even if we don't look at seventh house right now, even if we just, and we actually need to look at just the ruler. What is the status of this ruler? Like, are there harmonious aspects, or are there, for example, challenging aspects with Mars, with Pluto, with Uranus, with Saturn? Or those planets are rulers and they have challenging aspects with the other planets. If that's the case, we can understand, okay, what is this person triggering? Like, what is their behavior? Because if your ruler of your chart, so the ruler of your ascendant, has, let's say, an opposition with Mars. So just a random example. Let's say that your ascendant is in Gemini. So the ruler is Mercury, and your Mercury has an opposition with Mars. So this would mean that you will trigger confrontations. Even if you are not the actual trigger, you will find yourself in confrontations, generally with people. And generally that could be on different levels in different life areas. And chances are that this will also be a pattern in your relationships. And in this case, for example, Mars may not trigger like the official relationship houses, but then again, this is part of your behavior, and you are bringing this to every other area. So this is something which is not always that obvious, especially if we are doing the cookbook approach. So look at your seventh house, look at the ruler, and I don't know, look at Venus. Of course, that is essential, extremely important. I'm not denying it. But sometimes there are like deeper layers, or even they might be even on certain level more obvious, because that's generally our behavior. And this is important because, again, we can understand what are we provoking with our behavior. And the point here is not to blame yourself or to say, oh, I knew this was my fault, or there is no point in doing this. But you can understand and explore, why do I need this confrontation? What is my need that is being fulfilled? Because on certain level, you have a need if this energy is there for you. So again, explore your first house ruler. That would be extremely valuable knowledge. something else which we will definitely discuss is about, again, okay, let's go back to the houses, and then I will finish this thought. So first house, very important. Fifth house. Fifth house nowadays is essential. If we talk about the times when marriages have been arranged, or even nowadays, if the marriage is arranged, then fifth house may not be relevant. Also, I'm not saying the opposite. So I'm not saying that in the modern world, fifth house will always play a role, because here it's important what the person seeks. Fifth house is important about love. So if we want, or if we actually fall in love and we are attracted to someone, and this is the phase of dating, and it's very kind of like, this is fun, it's playful. There aren't any restrictions yet, or demands, or too much, or any responsibility. It's the level of play and fun. That's one area which is important. But for some people, obviously we may have different cases. For some people, this could be problematic, and they may skip this. So they may not want to, or they may not feel comfortable with this stage. Others may live only in this stage. So it's definitely important and interesting to explore fifth house. The other house, which is kind of like the traditional, and there are no surprises there, it's seventh house, the house of relationships. And in ancient times, this has also been the house of your enemies, like the enemies that you know, not your secret ones. Interesting dynamic. And I think that life has shown us that sometimes, the spouse may turn into an enemy, which happens, it's life. But this is the house where things get serious. So traditionally, seventh house is ruled by Libra. This is like the sign we have there traditionally. And in Libra, Saturn is exalted. What does that mean? It means that the seventh house relationships are more Saturn relationships. So they are official. They include responsibilities. They include certain level of, it could be control, or at least demands from the partners. So it's no longer fifth house. It's no longer having fun, playing, whatever. It's serious. And another interesting perspective, again, coming from the exaltation of Saturn. Saturn is related to work, to effort, to overcoming struggles. And this is, I think, philosophically something important to consider and to remember about relationships, that relationships are, I don't want to say hard work. I guess for some of us, it could be. I have Capricorn on the cusp of seventh house, so I guess that applies completely to me. But even if you're not lucky like me to have Capricorn ruling your relationships, it's still part of the foundation that relationships require work. And again, maybe you have had this experience, maybe you have seen this in people around you, that if we leave things like to be the way they are, and we don't want to put effort, we don't want to hold this, work on it, it can fall apart, or it can become meaningless or whatever. So that's kind of like foundational thing. Saturn is important for relationships, and it suggests that we need to work on that if we want to improve it. Another thing here, by the way, speaking of Saturn, is that Saturn is actually a planet which is much needed for official marriage. That applies to prediction, which won't be part, at least in this training. Maybe we can expand in the future, but I just want to give you this right now. In prediction, sometimes I think that people expect that, for example, they want to understand, will I get married, or when do I have like better chances to get married? And they expect that, for example, this should be Jupiter. Jupiter can bring me marriage. Sometimes it could be relevant, but what is more important is Saturn. Saturn formalizes things. Saturn brings this mutual responsibility and literally the formality. Marriage is formality. You are changing your status, even, from a law perspective. You are different right now from that moment on. So Saturn plays a significant role, especially for marriage. So I'm talking about the marriage part. So we have first, fifth, seventh house. Another house which could be and is potentially interesting and important is eighth house. And it's important from one side when it comes to financial stuff and resources and the mutual finances and resources of the partners, but also when it comes to sexuality and energy exchange. And sexuality is a very, again, big theme. It's not just look at that one thing in the chart, it will be clear. It's not. But the houses which we can explore are fifth and eighth. So they both have something to do with this topic. The fifth house, sexuality, is more about having fun and just, like some kind of relaxation. The eighth house, sexuality, is about intensity, and there could be like some kind of excessive needs, or if there is something like, for example, sex is used as a way for manipulation or for control, or if we want to create like a new being, a new human, like to continue the family. This is also eighth house. But those are also sometimes, important houses that we can explore. And it can be especially interesting if you see that for one of the partners, fifth house is essential, and for the other, it's eighth house. This can bring like some kind of conflict when it comes to their needs. It's not, again, like a black and white thing, like check this 1, 2, and 3 indications and it will be crystal clear. It's, a whole analysis of the chart. But I'm giving you just the general points that sometimes it could be a basis for either for a connection or for potential conflict. But eighth house can give us this information. Another house which could be relevant, especially for marriage, is 10th house. 10th house is about our status. And especially for women, this house can very often be triggered if a woman gets married, because in some cases, the woman is also changing her name. Both of the partners change their status from unmarried to married. So 10th house can be active also. This brings me a little bit back to another house, which we also need to consider. This is 4th house. 4th house can be important because, first of all, this is informative in describing our first family environment. So what was the family environment we lived in as children? And also, what are the scenarios of our parents? This can play a major role, especially if you find connections between 4th and 7th house. They could be different connections. For example, the ruler of 7th house in 4th house, or an aspect between the two rulers, or something like that. This can show you, for example, and I have seen this, and this is not rare, that a person, for example, is subconsciously trying to repeat the scenario of their parents in their own relationship. Or the opposite, they're trying to avoid this. And sometimes this could be a reason why, for example, they can't get married. For example, we see 4th house is very problematic. There is a connection with 7th house, and the person shares, yes, my parents had a terrible family, and I promised myself I will not do this. And this is how they create the blockage. So those are very interesting connections to explore. And generally, the 4th house can be related to some kind of karmic themes that come from the ancestors. And those are very important because we are not consciously aware about them. And when we are not consciously aware about something, we are like blindly going in this direction. So here, astrology again is a great help because you can recognize it. Okay, this is my pattern. And when you're consciously aware about it, you have much better chances to change the scenario. So 4th house can also be very important. All of this right now about the houses is related to the individual chart. So the chart of one partner, the chart of the other partner. We can explore them separately. Okay. Is there another house? I want to mention a little bit 11th house, even though technically it's not related to marriage or even love, but 11th house is the house of friendship, ideas, ideologies. And for some people, not always, but for some people, this can also be a scenario that the relationship or the marriage may turn into a very nice friendship, like, for example, some kind of mutual ideology or concept or belief can connect the partners. Again, it's not always relevant, but sometimes it could be. So that's important, for example, if you find connections between the other houses and 11th house, for example, 7th and 11th house somehow connected, or even 5th and 11th house. So you can explore things from this perspective, that you can become friends. You may have a connection on a soul level. This feels a little bit like one of the love types that we will explore, which is called agape. This is the Aquarius type of connection, which is about, soul connection and friendship. So this is sometimes also part of the picture. So we will talk about other things as well. Let me see if there's anything else I want to add here in our introduction. We talked about, family scenarios. Yeah. So we'll see where this leads us. So do you have any questions about what we talked about right now, or about the course, anything at all? You can type in the chat right now, and if someone is watching the recording later, you can always email me, or again, text me on Telegram. My handle is Marina Stoichkova with the lower score. Okay. That's a good question. How much astrology we need to know? So you need to have some foundation. You need to know the main characteristics of the planets. So what is the energy of Saturn? What is the energy of Mars? Some foundational knowledge about the signs, which reminds me, by the way, also I wanted to add, but I got distracted a little bit. Something very interesting is to explore, and we will do this, the axis of first, seventh house. So we always have signs in oppositions there, like in my case, Cancer, Capricorn. In your case, it could be Libra, Aries, or whatever, but it's always like one axis, two opposite signs. And this can also give us lots of information about the dynamic in the relationships. So which are the most common roles that we tend to play in our relationships, and which would be the role, or the role of the partner. So I just wanted to add this. Those are quite interesting. Yes, so you need to know, so this is not like a complete beginner's course. You need to know the foundations. For example, in the course, we have students who are currently studying the foundational astrology course, and that is absolutely not a problem, because first of all, the course will last for a couple of months. So you will learn in the meantime about the other things. Plus, here, it's important to get the logic, the concept, the main approach. So I guess that it's also a personal decision. Of course it is. You can see how you feel about this. And are the first and seventh houses also ascendant and descendant? Yes, absolutely. Those are just other names we use. First and seventh, ascendant, descendant. Fourth and 10th house are IC and MC, Imum Celi and Medium Celi. Those are absolutely the same, yes. Okay. So if you don't have any other questions, we can end our class today with very short balancing, just to, again, tune into the flow of love. I also want to say a couple of words about this. The situation right now, which is difficult for many people. And my belief is that right now, more than ever, we need to focus on the good, on the positive energies, on the positive experiences in life. And I think that the time is especially appropriate to explore love and to learn more about it, and to kind of like, yeah, literally tune into this energy. So yeah, I hope that together we will raise our vibration, we will do our little part to make things better in the field of that we all share. And yeah, love is, I think, one of the few things that is never old and like irrelevant, or even in those times that, as we started at the beginning, that, you know, in ancient times, love and marriage, those were different things. It doesn't mean that love hasn't existed. Like, it's this magical energy that makes everything meaningful. So I hope you will find, first of all, more love for yourself. Probably you have heard this concept, and I truly believe it. If inside of us we don't have love, and also it means love for ourselves, we can't find it outside. And this whole idea to find someone that will complete us, that will finally make us happy. If you have been on this path, and I have been for sure, you probably have found out that it's just not how things work. So yeah, I hope you will find more love within yourself. So, oops, sorry. Let's just close the space with very short balancing. So you can just sit comfortable and relax and just go into your heart, searching for this sparkle of love. Maybe you will find it right away. Maybe you need a little bit of searching, or maybe for now you just need to be quiet and just invite it. And just be with it. And if you feel like you have the resource, you may send this love to other people, to the field of the earth, to everyone that may need it right now. And you will still have resource for yourself as well. You're not losing it. And internally, we may say a little prayer or just an intention that there will be more love in the world, especially for the people that need it the most right now. that we find peace together and harmony and hope. Hope for everybody. And faith that whatever happens, we'll get through it and we'll still be able to feel this sparkle of love. Okay, if you're ready, you can open your eyes, return here. It was very nice to spend this time with you. I'm very excited to also be in this flow together with you. If you would like to join us, you can do that. We would love to have you. But if not, that's also totally fine. I hope you will find your way to connect to love and explore it and, yeah, have a wonderful relationships with other people. Will we be using our charts as examples, or could we? We'll see how everything goes. So right now I can be very specific. So I don't know yet. We'll see. Yes, prayers for peace. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. So have a beautiful week and I will see you soon. Bye.